Roundup 2021.
How many books did you finish all told?
I was at 102.
102. That
102, which that's my first 100 book year. So I was very like pat on the back. First time that I've read 100 plus books.
That's awesome though.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. And what was your ridiculous total, Hannah?
It's just messed up. 136.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're not. Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Hannah?
How does that make you? Yeah. The realization that I could probably do a lot in my life if I didn't read so much. Like, I don't know, dust, clean my kids' bookshelf.
That's silly.
Okay. So should we start with our faves?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Definitely start with faves.
And let's start with favorite. We'll do fiction because honestly, that's like what we want to talk about. And then we'll talk about the rest of it because we were supposed to. Because we set these expectations for ourselves that nobody else cares about.
That literally no one cares about.
Nobody cares about. But okay, so you go first. Favorite fiction or a couple if you could pick, because like I can't.
Mm-hmm. I ended up picking another one since we talked yesterday. Although did I write it down on here? Probably not. So then I'm not gonna know what it is. So this is the one that like made my very favorite. It's Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk.
I love it.
It's just a super fun book. It's just fun. It's this old lady who lives by herself in New York City. She's lived in New York City her whole life, and she doesn't have anywhere to go on New Year's Eve, and so she literally just like goes for a walk in her New York neighborhood. And so then the whole story is her remembering these places and like what they meant to her, you know, throughout her life. And yeah, it was just really fun, easy, interesting. Yeah. She's like a super fun character. So that was my favorite. Oh, I remember what my other one was. That was my favorite nonfiction, and then the other one, which is historical fiction, or that was my favorite fiction.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah. And then my favorite historical fiction, which I know you know I love this book.
Yeah, you do love that book.
I read it for book club this year, Last Train to Istanbul. So good. And yeah, everybody should just read it. It's just so good. I just love it. And everyone in our book club loved it, so it's definitely
so it's totally palatable to everybody.
It's not just like me obsessing over a book, because that happens. Yes. But like everyone.
No, it was really good. It was a good book.
It is really good. So
I was gonna ask you if the other one, the Lillian Boxfield Takes a Walk, is that gonna become your new Year's Eve book? Like, are you gonna read it every?
It really probably should. I feel like it probably should. It'll be worth reading every year like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were your favorites? If you narrowed it down to.
I did. I narrowed it down to two. Okay, one is a lighthearted, more lighthearted, entertaining read, and one is like not lighthearted at all, but like a really good read. And you can probably guess what they both are, or you will not be surprised at all. So the first one is The House in the Cerulean Sea, which we're going to read this year for book club, which I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Just a delightful character-driven novel, which honestly I don't read that many character-driven novels anymore. Like, they're always about like saving the whole world, or like these great, incredible like worlds, and like that's wonderful and I love it, but like, yeah, it's so good, and it has like that quirkiness that you kind of adore in fantasy sometimes. I think it would technically be in the fantasy genre, but magical, yeah, it's like a magical island, so like technically, but it's not about that. So yes, I love this book. You know I love this book. This book I've recommended like 1,000 times throughout this entire year.
And I'm super excited that we're reading that because you've been talking about it, like since you've read it, you've been talking about it. So I'm very happy and excited that we're reading it.
I'm also slightly worried now that I've like talked it up so much to you that you're gonna hate it. You're gonna be like, okay,
you do that. I'm just gonna say like that has happened before. So yeah, only time will tell if that actually happens with this one.
And I went on a book date yesterday with a friend of mine. And we were both talking about that, like, we're so glad we read it when it was like just out, because now everybody's talking about it all the time, and both of us would like just not read it on principle. We tend to do that. Like, if everybody loves it, I'm just not gonna read it.
Been there, done that. So yeah, I hear you.
So anyway, and then my other one, which was our favorite book club book, as well was There by Tommy Orange.
So good. Yes.
I loved this book. And I don't even know really how to talk about it in terms of like a genre. It's just a modern fiction, I guess.
Yeah.
But the weaving that he does within the storytelling and where it ends is so honest.
Yeah. It's poignant.
And poignant, and like this is stuff that people need to hear. So and being able to like walk in the way that he allows you to, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I love this book too.
Yeah,
so,
I totally agree. I think that book is amazing.
Those are my two.
Those are fiction. Okay, so should we just talk about nonfiction real quick?
Yeah, you do. What do you got?
Okay, so I have two nonfictions that were like least. Oh no, are we doing favorites or are we on least favorite?
Favorite.
Okay, never mind. Okay, we're still on favorite. So my why did I wrote my list down here, but it's like so disorganized at this point because I kept adding stuff that I can't even read my list. It's so bad.
I typed mine up, so it's like right over here on my computer screen.
That was really smart. Oh my gosh. If I had like more than one monitor, but I'm so like low tech. Okay, so one of them, I know I had two. I'll have to think what the other one was. Oh no, I do know what it is. It's sitting right here next to me. That's why I can't think of it. I didn't write it down. So the first one was Lost City of the Monkey God. And that was by Douglas Preston. That is an amazing book, and it is about a group of people who actually go down into, was it Ecuador? Now I can't remember. I read it so long ago, I can't remember which country it was. But anyway, it was the jungles of South America, might have been Mexico. And they're actually searching for this like legendary city, right? Legendary, the city of the monkey god, right? And so it's just like, it's sort of in the same vein as like travel.
It's like a travel, kind of like a travel
journal
kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's more what it is than anything. So, all the trials and tribulations, dealing with rainforests, everything.
Conditions.
It's awful. There's like, you can't even like walk because there's just like so much, so much foliage, and then like the snakes are like biting your legs off. I mean, it's not like, oh, it's a snake bite. It's like that thing will kill you after it eats your leg, like that kind of snake. And then they all get back, and then they have all these health problems too, like just from being in this place. So anyway, it was just really, really interesting, and like what they found, and I don't want to spoil it or anything, but like what was found was super interesting. And the first part is actually like sort of the history of the predecessors who have like gone to look for the city of the monkey god, and a little history about the legend of the city of the monkey god. So anyway, it's super interesting, and I really liked it. Right at my alley because it's like archaeology kind of.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Lost City of the Monkey God, and then this was the other one that I picked. Was Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. This is an ethnography, and it's amazing. It's just.
I don't think I knew that was an ethnography.
Yeah, she actually is a trained anthropologist.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
I didn't know that. I will have to.
The last living, actually, I think it says right on the front. The story of the last black cargo is the subtitle. He was the last living enslaved person that they knew about, obviously, at the time that she was writing, this was in 1927.
Wow.
She visited him and wrote up his ethnography. So that's.
I will have to read that. I need to. You're gonna have to send me your list. You do need to type up your list and send it to me so I can put some of this stuff on my.
I will.
Never-ending to read list.
I know, right? For both of us.
So mine, interestingly enough, neither of mine are historical. Surprise! No, not at all surprising. So I also have two nonfictions that I loved, and the first one, okay. This is in no order. Like, these are just so different in many ways that they're in no order. But the first one is called The Undocumented Americans.
Okay.
And I'm Karla, Cornejo, Villavicencio.
Okay.
Villavicencio. Lionel has said it to me 100 times, but it is so good. So, she is writing, about undocumented Americans and their stories, and she's traveling all over, the country, and it's partially her story and the story of her parents, but also like all of these other really, it was a hard read for me because of my family that I've married into, but like, so the chapters are like Staten Island, Ground Zero, Miami, Flint, Cleveland, and New Haven. So like in these geographical places, she's kind of speaking to and telling the story of undocumented Americans. And it is, I mean, it is a National Book Award finalist. I just like to, but it is, this is one of the ones I read for the anti-racist book.
What, like the book fest that we went to?
Book fest. That's, I was like, all I could come up with was book fair because I have Scholastic in my head. I'm like, it's not a book fair. That's not what it's called. But yes, the anti-racist book fest this was one of them that I read for that.
Yeah.
And then the other one, which I read before that, but was also there, is Eloquent Rage by Brittney Cooper, who I love her. Love this book. Love her voice. Read it on, or listened to it on Audible, picked the book up as well, have kind of read different chapters of it. A Black feminist discovers her superpower, have used it in some of my sermons even, like some, because there is a real spiritual connection that she does through this as well. And yeah, I love that book. So those were my two favorite nonfictions.
Very good. Good picks on that.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about our least favorite.
How about I go first, because I think I have less than you. I only have one.
Okay.
I actually have a really hard time coming up with least favorite books usually, because so many books are so well loved, and I like value people's love of books like above my own objective opinions of certain things. But this book to me, and partially it's because it is so popular, I'm 100% sure, it's called The Midnight Library. You
told me about it because I was gonna read it, and you're like, "Don't read it, don't read it." I'm like, "Okay, never mind."
By Matt Haig.
Yep.
It is one of all of my books on Goodreads. It tells you like when you do your year in numbers, right? Like the one that's most shelved and the one that's least shelved. This was the most shelved of the books that I've read this year on Goodreads. And I understand why people like it and love it and find great connection to it. I am just in a place in my life where I wanted to just be like, yeah, whatever. Figure out how to be happy where you are. You need a whole book to tell you that? So, but that's about my journey. But in terms of like books that I ended up finishing and like forced myself to finish, there is one that I did not, which you're going to talk about. I couldn't put it on my list because I didn't finish it.
You didn't finish it?
But of all, it was a struggle to finish it. And I did actually, I think I listened to it on Audible, thankfully. So I might have not listened to some of the middle of it as well, very well. But
that's right.
Yes. But I do get that it hits a chord for a lot of people who are in need of that particular chord being plucked and being given a new vision. And I just, not my cup of tea. Or hot chocolate, as the case may be.
Yeah, mint hot chocolate, I believe.
Okay, you go ahead.
So mine, as you already know, is my least favorite,
Terra
Incognita by Sarah Wheeler. Yeah. So we read this book for book club, as I think it must have been our Antarctic. Yeah, it must have been our Antarctica book.
Yeah.
On our journey around the world in our book club. And that book, I felt like by about halfway through that book, I was just reading that book so that I could come up with more fodder to like be mean about it in book club. Like there was like no other reason to read it at that point. Like I just hit that point where it's like, okay, I'm going to finish this because A, it's my book club, so I kind of have to finish the book. And B, because the more I read, the more I'm going to be able to like complain about it and have like legitimate reasons for being like, this book was trash.
To be fair,
that being said, there were people in the book club who liked it.
Who liked it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Just we got to put that out there. That there are people who do like that book. Just
who absolutely like really liked the book, liked her journey, how it was written up, the whole thing.
Enjoyed her voice.
I
did not enjoy her voice.
Nor did I. There were so many things that I did not like in that book. And I feel like I don't necessarily need to get into it on this video, but it's definitely for me, there was nothing like redeeming. There was not like, okay, I didn't like it, but and then like a good thing that like helped get me through it. I didn't have any of that, like, oh, but this one thing, you know. It just felt like a slog. It felt like there was no continuity for me. Everybody just got like their name mentioned and then she moved on. A place mentioned and then moved on. Like it felt like here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing. Here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing. There was no connection tissue for me the way that I was reading it. So that was definitely my least favorite book club book, and it was definitely my least favorite book that I actually managed to get through all the way through this year. So yeah.
So most likely to recommend.
Yes.
I also do have two because I am that person, but one is fiction and one is nonfiction. So again, I give myself like the ability to like, you know, own that.
I only have one, so if you want me to go, I can just go.
Oh, you go ahead.
And quick. The one that I would, and I have recommended to a number of people already, that I read this year, and I'm like, this is profound, this is amazing, is A Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis.
Yes, which is on my to-do list, to read list as soon as mom is done with it, gets it back.
Is done with it, yeah. Because I sent it to you guys. I'm like, you have to read this. We talked about it in our abolition class that we did this year. It has so many applications, and it's brilliant, and it's very readable. The chapters are really like, for me, I read it a chapter at a time because they're thematic. So each chapter has its own topic. And for me, like I read a chapter a day when I read it, and it's still, I think there's only like 8 or 10 chapters. It's not a big fat book. It's a skinny little thing. But it gave me a chance to really like think about what she's saying and like how this is the reality for people who do not look like me. Do not have the economic situation that I have. And to really absorb it and think about it and contemplate that in a way that was meaningful, you know, rather than just sort of like pounding it out and like getting through it. So yeah, that's definitely, it's probably like number one on books that I read this year for sure, of stuff that I would recommend to people. And it's Angela Davis, so you know it's going to be brilliant, and amazing, you know. But it was very readable and accessible, I felt, like, and relevant.
Sadly, incredibly relevant still,
And she wrote it like 1980, I think, or something like that. So
So, and actually, in line with that is actually an anthology of mine that we also are going to be reading for our book club this year. But You Are Your Best Thing by Tarana Burke and Brittney Brown. Well, edited by Tarana Burke and Brittney Brown, because it is a group of essays. And so I love a good essay. I love essays. I like anthologies. I find them so fascinating. It is like these little windows and peeks into people's lives and passions, like these ones particularly into their lives, and like the way in which they are, and being vulnerable in this particular case, because it's vulnerability, shame, resilience, and the Black experience. So but being allowed just that glimpse of that, but even in other essays too, like even if it's their passion or just something that they thought about once and then like just did a deep dive on, and like just being able to kind of see that in people, I find that really really connective and kind of a beautiful gift that you don't necessarily get in fiction, right? Like so I really love this one. I recommend that one. And then the other one, the fiction one, other than The House in the Cerulean Sea, is actually a YA called Station 11 by, hold on, let me get her name, Emily St. John Mendel.
Oh, okay.
And it's, I recommend it with a content warning that it is about an epidemic, like a pandemic. So that's like the flu, and she wrote this before 2020. So, but it was really just a really interesting, and actually there's I think HBO is doing a mini series on it right now. That's coming out as well, but I really enjoyed it. I found it really fascinating and a really cool thought experiment. without it being, I'm just going to go into my least recommend, The Stand by Stephen King, which I know everybody loves and it's fine. Whatever. These are like books about the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Station 11, like a normal human-sized book.
Yeah.
The Sand.
Yeah.
Never ending. Like what? A quarter, like maybe two, like a halfway to like maybe 2/3. I'm like, can everybody just die so we can be done? Like, can everybody just die? So if you want to read a book that's a thought experiment on global pandemic,
yeah,
I would personally recommend Station 11, and I would never recommend The Stand. Me not recommending The Stand, though, has so much to do with who I am as a reader, and not at all about, I mean, I do know that people really, well, because I read that book, because I read his newer one, The Institute, and I like read it in a day and a half. I mean, it's a chunk of a book.
Yeah.
And but his writing is incredible. Like, he's very vivid and his character building is very good. And like, you're just like, you're interested. And so I asked my social media people, community, like, what's another Stephen King book? Like, that was my first Stephen King book I ever read. Everyone's like, oh, you have to read The Stand. You have to read The Stand. I'm like, okay, I'll read The Stand. And a new miniseries was coming out, right? Like,
yep.
So I was like, okay, cool. Not that I'm gonna watch that, because I'm not gonna watch that, but
it's not.
I read the book, and that was
I
bad.
did have to watch. I had to watch it because, of course, George loves The Stand. I've never read The Stand, but I had to watch the new miniseries. Yeah.
And it is an extremely long book, which, as if anybody who's ever followed us before or listened to me talk knows, I have commitment issues, and big fat books are not my thing.
Yep.
They are more your thing than my thing.
Kind of my thing. Yep.
But, and also I just was done. Like, I did not find the characters endearing. I didn't care if anybody lived. I really just preferred if everybody died so I could move on with my life. But that, I mean, yeah, but I also do recognize that book is probably like a classic in many ways.
Yeah.
And one that is deeply rooted in people's like reading journeys. So I honor that and say, if you haven't yet read it, I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Watch one of the two miniseries. See if you're interested in those characters. If you are, then read it. Yeah. But that's my opinion. Anyway, I hated that book.
I know you did.
Okay, your turn. I will you stop berating The Stand.
What are we even on? I don't know what we're talking about now.
You're one you would never recommend.
Oh yes, I never recommend. So this one was like so weird. This book that I would never recommend to anyone. I actually kind of want somebody else to read it who's maybe like smarter or like more into weird stuff than I am. Yeah, so they can tell me what this book was about. It was called White for Witching. And it was by Helen Oyeyemi. I'm not sure how to say her last name. And it was like on all of these like sort of modern, like Gothic lit lists, right? And I love reading kind of like this Gothic stuff in like the fall, and puts me in the mood. And so I just got this one from the library. It's a skinny little thing, which is why it was no problem to read it, even though it like literally never made sense to me at all. I was just sort of like always waiting. How like it's not that long. You're just waiting for it all to like start to make sense. Right. I got to the end. I'm like, I got nothing for this. I have no idea what this book was about, because it's like about this young girl, and like her mom dies, right? And so then it's like her journey for sure. But then there's the other part of it is like this house that she lives in is like, it's not haunted, but it sort of is. But it does like weird things. Like the house is its own character, like in the book, and like it like has its own parts where it's talking, right? Anyway, it was very strange, very odd. And honestly, I got to the end. I'm like, okay, I don't really know what that book was about, or how it started or how it ended. And I both started and ended it. So
probably not one you'd recommend isn't like, hey, some other than like, can somebody read this thing?
Like,
and
yeah, I feel
tell me
like
that I'm not
I
crazy
to read it. Like I want my friend Anna Marie to read it because she's like very like I don't know, she like understands weird stuff. She was like a lit major. And she got like a master's in literature. So I feel like maybe she would be able to like get it and then she could tell me about it, or like you might be able to get it and tell me about it. But I wouldn't recommend it like this is amazing, you have to read it. I'd be like, this one's a weird one, and if you want to read it and tell me what it's about, that'd be great. That's the recommendation.
If you read it, you have to call me and tell me what it's about.
Yes, because I read it and I'm like, I got nothing.
We are to the glad I read it, but don't need to ever read it again.
Yeah.
Which I had a lot. So how many do you have?
Oh, I only had one.
Oh, I had 3. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, mine was really long.
Oh.
No, it was the autobiography of Malcolm X. Is the one
yeah.
And it isn't like I don't want to read it again because it was bad or anything. Like it wasn't that. I listened to it on Audible, and it was narrated by Lawrence Fishburne.
Ooh,
so like the whole experience of it was actually like amazing. For sure. Like I love listening to Lawrence Fishburne. He's fantastic. He gave a voice to a person that I've never really learned about, right? Like we always learned about MLK, and it was always sort of like MLK versus Malcolm X. It was always sort of this like antagonistic relationship that like we learned and internalized, even though like that was not really like the way it was, but like this is the history that we get, in grade school. And so I was super interested to actually like hear Malcolm X in Malcolm X's words. And this was his autobiography as it was related to Alex Haley, who wrote Roots, of course. So it's brilliant writing. And I loved hearing Malcolm X talk about his experience in his own words. Yeah. I think there is a lot of value in that. Yeah. Yeah. So that it's a book that I absolutely 125% am so glad that I took the time to read / listen to. Highly recommend it if you like want to know about Malcolm X. I actually thought it was really very well done. I love listening to Lawrence Fishburne, but it was absolutely worth it. Yeah, for sure.
My 3, and these are books that again I would recommend to people to read. Yeah. And I think that they're important reads, but they're ones that are usually so painful and create such empathy and like the heartache that I can never read them again. Or if I did, it would have to be really for a particular reason, like a book club or like I was going to talk about it or something like that. So I did have 3 of them, and they're from very different things. One's The Last Girl, by Nadia Murad, which is actually, and this was the thing I didn't know about, was actually about the religious minorities in Iraq and the horror that was, and the atrocities committed upon those communities during the Iraq War. And it's her story of being trafficked a couple of times. And, but it was really an interesting point in history as well, and like modern history, like stuff that I was alive for and just had no window into or understanding of. Like, you think of war and yes, there's gonna be atrocities, but really putting names and faces and people's lives behind it is always super painful, but also really important, I think. And in that same vein, I just finished, for a book club thing, a book called Enrique's Journey by Sonia Nazario, which is about the journey from Central America to the United States of this one particular boy, but of those migrant miners who are crossing Mexico in order to try and get into the United States, and that process and what that looks like. And Sonia Nazario actually took the journey as well, and yeah, I thought it was really well done. I think she is really honest about both the journey itself as well as what happens in America. And for people who are living here, oftentimes undocumented, and what that looks like and how that isn't such a glorious win as we sometimes, I think, think about it that way. So that was a really good one. And then the last one, which I do have, and I said I won't read this one again. I probably will. I have kept it on my shelf, but this is Half the Sky by Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Wooden, and it's about women and girls and the atrocities across the world that continue to happen to women and girls, and the ways in which we as a society continue to perpetuate an environment and a culture that allows for such. And so again, difficult to read. Glad I read it. And yeah, those were my 3. But again, I would recommend any of those books. I think they're all very well done, very different. But can you tell the sun came out?
Yeah. Little sunshine right in your face there.
Sunshine. Yeah. Super good lighting.
Soak up a little vitamin D. You might need it.
Yeah, that's true. Get my happy
soda. You
happy juice.